Welcome to Live Life with Sean. I'm your host, Sean Higgins. I'm a lifelong information security technology expert with a passion for speaking, coaching, and writing. In this podcast, I'm going to tell you stories about what has gone on in my life. And I'm hoping that by me sharing my stories, it will help you with whatever you're going through. If you enjoy this content, please share it, subscribe to it, like it, and or leave a comment, as this will help others enjoy this podcast. Thank you for joining me, and let's get started. I'll tell you a little story. I was recently working with an energy practitioner and had an amazing session with him. One of the items that we worked on was about me being seen. As the practitioner talked, he said it happened when I was about 14. I had to think for a little bit about my life when I was 14, and then I realized at 14, I was in eighth grade. And in eighth grade, I was bullied. At the time, I did not call it bullying because I believed for a long time that bullying was that big, threatening guy who threatened to beat you up unless you gave him your lunch money. But this bullying was more like the cyberbullying that we have today. In my case, one or more of my classmates would mess with my locker. Sometimes they would mess with the lock and make it harder for me to open it. Sometimes they would add or remove stuff from my locker. And in the worst case, they would add stuff to my lunch and make it uneatable. I say they because I never knew really who they were, but I had a good idea of the potential group of boys that it was. I do not recall how long this went on, but it was annoying. I started to fear going to my locker. I didn't know who to talk to about it because I didn't want to be seen as a complainer. Plus, I was supposed to be man enough to handle this by myself. At least that's what I told myself. That's what I believed. Eventually, I did find a way. I did handle it in my own way. One day, I remember opening up my lunch and found some plaster shavings in my lunch. And I was just done. I was done and tired of whatever was going on and wanted it to stop. So I walked into the lunchroom and I headed toward this table that had my suspected perpetrators at it. And I then proceeded to dump my lunch contents onto the lunch of the biggest guy at that table. Now, I'm not really certain this big guy was involved, but I knew some of the guys at the table were involved. And in hindsight, I think I dumped the stuff on the big guy's lunch because his back was towards me as I approached the table. After dumping the crap on his lunch, I just turned and walked away calmly. I felt satisfied and just like, oh, finally. I really didn't get too far because it wasn't that long afterwards that the big guy came after me, knocked me down, and attempted to beat me up. I know it didn't last long because it was quickly broken up and we were both taken to the principal's office where we both got detention. I really feared telling my parents about the detention, and I don't remember what I told them, but I'm sure I did not tell them what was going on all that year, that I was being bullied. As I think back, after dumping my lunch on that big guy's lunch, the stuff stopped happening around my locker. I wish I could say that was the end of it, but I know I at least carried that fear of something's going to happen to my locker into high school. There are a few things that I remember about the early days in high school. First, I had to share a locker with one of my football teammates. Second, I remember still fearing that those guys might come start messing around in my locker. And third, what would happen if they messed with my teammate's stuff instead of mine? Would my teammate consider me responsible and take it out on me? It weighed heavy on me. There was one thing that saved me. About halfway through that first term in high school, our family moved. I was elated. I think I was the only one that was really excited about it. My sister, I know, was not very thrilled about moving, but I was relieved. I could finally be away from the bullies and I would never have to worry about them again. At least, so I thought. Before I get there, I did eventually tell my mother about the bullying. It was many years later, and I believe it was even after I finished university. I remember being at home. I remember we were in the kitchen and we started talking about the move. And she was talking how it saved my parents' marriage. See, at the time, before we moved, we were 10 minutes from my father's office, and he would come home and not be very happy with his job and basically unload on my mother and saying just how bad her day was. Sorry, how bad his day was. And I think it was wearing on the marriage. And when we moved, we were about 40, 45 minutes from the house. And that time gave my father time to just let go of work by the time he got home. I told her how the move had saved me, how I was so ready to be done with that town. I told her what had happened all those years ago. And I told her that after we moved, I felt much safer. I could start anew and not worry about them. As I said, I thought I was done with it. But when I was working with this energy practitioner, he was checking my energy, and all of a sudden he goes, "What's keeping me?" This is him asking me, "from showing up?" And when he said at age 14, bullying was the thing that came to me. As I look back at it now, after he said that, because I was bullied, I started to believe that if I was not seen, then I might not be bullied. Interesting. And then as I looked at that, I started to look through my life and look at times in my life when I did not step out. Like, for example, many years ago, I wrote a piece of software which today would be called a sim before there was even such a thing, but I never shared it with anybody. And I wondered why I never shared it. I think maybe it's because I didn't want to be seen. Now, I'm not going to blame being bullying on not stepping out. I just look at it as interesting. It is interesting that I was holding on to this old energy that might have held me back in some areas, not everywhere, because I have had success in my life and I'm very grateful for it. I'm just saying it might have slowed me down in some areas because now I think I'm free of it. Now that I've cleared this old energy, I don't, first off, I don't expect I'm going to go, look at me. But I've noticed subtle changes. I've been more free to talk about what I'm working on with more people, and I'm more excited about it. Will it go somewhere? Who knows? I know it would never go anywhere if I kept it to myself. And as I close here, I wonder what else my body is holding on to. And am I willing to let it go? I certainly hope so. So, what I encourage you is, are there things in your life that you're holding on to? Holding on to that may be affecting you and you didn't even know it. Are you willing to release them? Maybe take some time and examine some of those things that happened in your life and make sure you're really clear with them. And if you need a practitioner, go seek one out because hopefully they can help you as well. Thank you for joining Live Life with Sean. If you enjoyed this show, please share it, subscribe to it, like it, and or leave a comment, as this will help others find Live Life with Sean. And until next time, have a wonderful week.